The Stakeout is the second episode of the second season of Parks and Rec. This is directed by Seth Gordon, and as always, there will be spoilers from now as I talk about what happens and share some thoughts. I'm still not at this stage with Parks and Rec where I want to do a deep analysis. There are certain sitcoms that I talk about, and I go through everything that happens and obviously share some thoughts. With this one, I feel like I'm starting to want to talk about smaller details here and there, but I'm still not at that stage where I want to talk about every tiny little thing. But I think that might happen at some point because I am starting to enjoy the show. As I've mentioned before, this is my third attempt watching it. This is the furthest I've ever got, and I actually rather enjoyed this episode. The only thing I didn't like about it, and I'll talk about this briefly, then I'll go through everything else chronologically, so there are spoilers from now. The only thing I really don't care for is the story with Mark and Anne, and the fact that Leslie has said that she's fine with them dating, but then she's actually not. I don't think Mark is interesting as a character. I don't really like Anne. I don't dislike her, but she's certainly not a character who brings me any humour, any comedy. There's nothing about her that I find appealing. So I don't care about either of them, never mind when they're together. And I also really hope that we're not just getting episode after episode of Leslie pining for Mark, as it's going to get really old really quickly. So that's my only kind of criticism, or the only thing that I didn't like about the episode. But everything else was really great. There is a community garden in the pit, and Leslie realises that somebody is growing marijuana there. So she and Tom decide to do a stakeout. She brings all kinds of supplies, including candy necklaces, because why wouldn't you? And it's pretty interesting. And initially, it seems like Andy is the kingpin. And then they realise that Andy thought it was just fruit and vegetables there. I don't know how I feel about Andy as a character. I feel like in the previous season, I definitely didn't like him, but I'm starting to warm to him a little bit more. I still wouldn't say I like the character, but actually in this episode, he was more than tolerable. So I'm taking that as a good sign. We also have part of the story focusing on Ron. I'll come back to Leslie and Tom in a little bit. But Ron has a hernia, and he is basically frozen in the spot. He's in his office chair in his office and can't move for the pain. And April made me like her for the first time in, 8 episodes. For the first time, I saw value in the character, because up until this point, she has bored me so much. And actually, she did something that was really sweet, because she went home and then something just told her that something was wrong with Ron. So she went back to the office. And we get a little bit of comedy out of that. Obviously, a hernia is quite a serious situation, and Ron is clearly in pain. But I liked what she brought to this, and she left and was going to come back with her father's pickup, which she eventually does do, and she wheels Ron out of the office towards the pickup, which was a pretty amusing scene. So for the first time in 8 episodes, I actually liked April, and I'm starting to like Andy. So definitely turning some corners there. Unfortunately, things are not going very well with the stakeout. Andy and Leslie go off to get some food, and Tom obviously stays there, but he locks himself out of the van. And he tries to break into the van, and Mark and Anne just happen to be coming back from their date at the same time, and they see somebody trying to break into a van. They don't realise it's Tom, and I don't blame them for what they did, because they decided to phone the police, and I don't think that was the wrong decision, because it did genuinely look like somebody was trying to break into a vehicle that wasn't theirs. But that meant that Tom got a visit from the police, and actually it probably would have went fine, but he talked back to the officer a little bit. He gave the officer some cheek, and he ended up getting arrested, and Leslie went down to the prison, and she had a bit of a tantrum. She makes the best angry facial expression. It's absolutely fantastic. And she then ends up waiting there for Tom, and it was really sweet and really moving. And then Tom gave her some words of encouragement afterwards, once he was released. And he said to her, "Leslie, Mark's an idiot. You can do a lot better than him. And I don't think he was referring to himself. Tom made it clear he wasn't coming on to her. But I think that that's true as well. I don't think it was just a line and then a backtrack. I genuinely don't think he's interested in Leslie that way. If, however many episodes down the line, something happens between them, I might be surprised. If it was a drunken thing, I wouldn't be surprised. But if it was a serious thing, I would be surprised. So we'll see what happens there. But I thought that was a really sweet thing for him to say. That main part of the narrative I really liked. I thought it worked really well. Tom was absolutely delightful. The police officer I thought was really great as well. And everything about it, apart from Mark and Anne, I really enjoyed. I don't dislike neither Mark nor Anne, but I don't care for either of them, and I really don't care for their relationship. I really hope that it's not just every episode has a subplot involving Leslie and Mark, because that's going to annoy me. But if the main narrative, as is the case here, is strong enough, then I can overlook it. We'll see how it goes, but Parks and Rec is definitely getting better as the season progresses. Definitely a lot stronger than the previous season. And I'm looking forward to finding out what's next in store. The Stakeout was definitely a pretty decent episode.